Back once again with Taylor Bradford of the Gloucester Daily Times to get us caught up on all the things going on in our community. How you doing, Taylor?
Doing well. Excited that the weather is warming and we're finally getting everyone outside and listening to live music. I'm eager and
Yeah.
excited.
Now, speaking of which, I was down at Good Harbor Beach last week, and it happened to be a super low tide. I was out on Salt Island. I saw the posts out there. There were a ton of people checking out the area. What is going on there?
That's a great question. I know there's been a lot of buzz about I know you can see at least 38 posts from a binoculars view. And I was curious as well because my whole life I've gone out there, thought it was public land, ventured, gotten some poison ivy or so, and done the whole Gloucester experience over in that island, and went on the city's assessor's website and found out that the island's actually privately owned by a family, the Martignetti family out of Woburn, from their real estate company. And they are bringing goats to the island. And so those posts will become fences, which will keep goats in. And Ron Martignetti, the father of the family, mentioned that it's meant to keep goats in and not people out. That was his big emphasis, was kind of saying that, the goats will be implemented onto the island to get rid of the poison ivy so that people can enjoy the island even more so without dealing with those brush and briars that oftentimes kind of snag on people as they continue to explore. Now that is all in good, but obviously the chatter began to rise as people kind of speculated of what else could it be. This can't truly be the end of this conversation. And there actually had been a rendering that was floating around Briar Neck and other parts of the community that an architect that had chatted with the Martignetti family had created, and it was a mansion with a lighthouse and what seemed to be an infinity pool on the island, and it was kind of rumored that this might be the next step in the plan, and so I reached out to the Martignetti family and I wanted to say, what is planned to be here in the immediate future and in the later down the pike. And Ron had mentioned that, right now it's just the goats. That rendering, he had spoken to an architect who just asked him, what do you have plans with the island? And he had mentioned that, he doesn't really know. And so the architect created this rendering and it got around. And Ron said, that was just a dream. That was just something that he, aspires to have, wherever. But it just happened that this rendering was on the island. So he said, no, is this the immediate plan for the island? No, the goats are strictly just to get rid of the poison ivy. Could this be something that he creates later down the pike or proposes later down the pike? Maybe, but he said there's no sweat if it never happens, and that his emphasis really is on the community and trying to make sure that everyone stays happy, because this is such a popular spot here in Cape Ann, an iconic figure of Good Harbor Beach. And so that was an interesting thing, just to kind of hear his thoughts and talk to some residents and the group Friends of Good Harbor, and just how eager they are to continue a conversation with the Martignetti family now that they know who owns it. And their real estate company is based out of Woburn, but John, Paul, the son, and Ron both mentioned that the purchase of this island back in 2017 for $250,000 was a private endeavor. It was not related to the real estate company at all. This was something that their family just saw a beautiful island, had the money, and decided to acquire it. Which I thought was really interesting, especially if you look to the history of the purchasing with this island, that back in 2013, a group of conservation organizations had come together to try to purchase the island. It fell through. And then back in 2017, it popped back onto the market. So a couple other conservation groups looked to purchase the island, but in the end, Martignetti ended up purchasing the island. So there had been back and forth, but it shows that the residents really want to keep this preserved and available for the public, such as yourself, Corey, who, you're going out there, you're enjoying. You said there's so many people, and it would be a jolt in everyone's system if you couldn't get onto the island anymore, as, say your grandkids want to explore and you couldn't, because it's private land. And I think that's what makes this private land very different than a lot of other private land in the community, that it is accessible to the community. So we'll see, because I think this narrative is definitely going to continue, especially as those goats get onto the island. I mean, how are they going to weather the storms that we get? I got a call this morning about somebody asking where their feces is going to go and how that might contaminate the water.
That's my next question.
Yeah, so there's all these questions that we don't know. And they said that the goats aren't coming really, really soon because they still have to finish putting the fences up. But again, they mentioned that the fences are there to keep goats in, not people out. So we'll see what the goats deal is once they're on the island. But
There's a lot of questions here, Taylor, because like how tall these fences going to be? Because I have lots of friends and farmers with goats, and those things can jump a mile. So that's
Yeah.
interesting. The other thing is that when that sold for way under market value, if I remember. And I actually thought there was a contingency that it couldn't be developed on. That was part of the agreement, but apparently I'm wrong about that.
mm.
Did the city sell it? Was it owned by the city originally?
No, so that's a great question. So it was owned by this family that had Karen Kimball Maslow was the daughter of the former the late owner of it. And in 2013, Karen she kind of ran the property and kind of managed it. And in 2013, she came to the Friends of Good Harbor with an offer to sell the island for $300,000. And then with a caveat that her family would be guaranteed 6 parking spaces at Good Harbor. So then now we're getting to the weeds of the kind of the history of it. And then Friends of Good Harbor were working on raising the money, but the city refused to give the parking spaces to the family. And so
valuable.
Right. And so the sales agreement ended. It was taken off the market and it came back onto the market for $750,000. And so that's crazy. That's like so much more money. And so then the Essex County Land Trust and a couple other organizations were trying to acquire it. But in the ultimate end, the Martignetti family purchased it for $250,000. And if you go on the assessor's website, the 5-acre island is assessed at $8,400. So you're getting a lot of different numbers.
Yeah.
So, but that's kind of the backstory.
I think the last time it was owned, it was the Parsons Lobster Company up until the 50s. I've seen turn of the century.
Guy Parsons.
Cool.
Guy Parsons had owned it. Mm-hmm.
All right, well, Taylor, let's stick with the whole beach parking theme now and talk about what's going on with the residential streets.
Right. So if you remember last year, there was so many parking situations going on in the city. In one weekend in July alone, the Gloucester Police issued 478 parking tickets that were worth $31,000, which is just insane. And so the city council has added 45 city streets and roads to be resident-only parking this summer and tow-away zones for anyone else. And so that is hopefully going to keep those who don't belong on residential streets off and really streamline to Good Harbor Beach. And this resident only parking is from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. from May 1st to September 15th. And the fine for a violation has also changed. So the big thing last year was the fine's only $15. I don't need to go to Good Harbor Beach parking lot when I'll swallow the ticket and most likely not get towed. Now it's $50, which is, I don't know about you guys, but that's a kick in anybody's budget book. So that's the big changes this year. And so their resident parking stickers cost $5 and are available for purchase at City Hall. And just to know, and this is something that I learned yesterday, mayor's office made me aware of it, that if you have a beach resident sticker, that counts as a resident only sticker. So if you have a beach resident sticker, that counts for parking in those residential only areas, but it's not the other way around. So if you have a resident sticker and you're looking to go park at the Good Harbor Beach and have that beach sticker, it doesn't count. So definitely do your homework before you park anywhere near our beaches, because you may be out $50. So that's kind of big, the biggest update with what our summers might look like. And I'm really curious because I was talking with someone this morning just about how last year Gloucester was the oasis for a lot of people, and this year it's a celebration for people. So we'll see what happens.
Taylor, has there been any conversation about increased police patrol up here in Lanesville and the quarries and Plum Cove Beach?
That's a great question, and I'll have to follow up with you on that. I know that I believe that they had worked on bringing more patrol, at least one more patrolman to that area, especially the quarries last summer. And this summer I've seen the police log reports that have come through of, hordes of kids going out to the quarries. And so that's a good, actually a follow-up article to do is just what the quarry situation is this year, as we know that they were closed last summer. And I know a lot of people were disappointed about that. But that's a great question. I know that Vice President of the City Council, Val Gilman, has been working really hard with her constituents in Ward 4 in that area just to kind of work and make sure that those who need access to the beaches and who are, residents of the area get the parking that they've paid for through taxes. So we'll see.
I've seen the signs, resident only temporary parking around. So they've been posted, but I just wonder how much patrolling will happen. So we'll find out.
Taylor, let's button up a couple long-standing discussions we've had. First is the firing range over in West Gloucester at Haskell's.
Yeah, so I've talked to you about this for what feels like 4 years now. It's been about a year, but the West Gloucester firing range had, been up and running for a couple months as the city had amended an ordinance to allow the Gloucester Police Department to do their biannual training requirements over behind Haskell Pond Reservoir at that site. However, now, according to city ordinance, it will never become a shooting range again. So this had been a process that we had been following as they worked, and the city had been very adamant that the police department needs to use this space for their shooting practice. And the residents and abutters were not having it. They said it's noisy, it's loud, it's dangerous. This part is part of local trails. And so the city council kind of did a little bit of, bending, saying that we'll adjust times, but it really has to be here. Then the residents came back with lawyers and did some of their own research and found that it's actually illegal to have the firing range there due to Article 97 and additional other claims that the lawyers had found. And so once the city found that it was illegal, they backed off and said, you're right, stood back and shut it down. And now the process has finalized with the city council as of last week, voting to change the ordinance entirely. And so I spoke with Ed Conley of the police department yesterday, and he had mentioned that they are still looking to find a space to do their trainings. They were over at the Sportsman Club most recently, but that is a temporary fix to the problem for them. And so they're looking to try to find either, again, one of those contained boxes, an outdoor location, or renovate and fix up the place that's in the police department. But he's really focused on financially what's the most responsible decision, because driving to Fort Devens just wasn't going to cut it, as it was quite expensive for them to travel.
Gotcha. And lastly, speed limits over in Annisquam.
Yeah, so I think you think speed limits, this doesn't, super rigoring story. But I think that this one is one to remember, as it is truly the Annisquam village coming together and seeing a problem and raising a voice and working through the process to find a solution. And the residents over in Annisquam village worked with Val Gilman and others to try to figure out how best to, especially on Leonard Street, how to reduce the speed from 30 miles per hour to 20 miles per hour, as we see those tight roads, tight corners, and a lot of close calls. And so they've been working to get that reduction and working with the Mass DOT, getting a letter of confirmation and approval from Police Chief Ed Conley, and as of last Tuesday, it is official that they will be bringing the speed limit down from 30 miles per hour to 20 miles per hour. And so you might see those bumper stickers that Annisquam villagers have been having on their cars that say 20 is plenty for Squam, and you just don't need bumper stickers aren't the only thing that say that now. So if you go through there, just make sure you keep your foot on the gas and go a little bit slower to keep everyone safe and happy.
Thank you. Good job, Annisquam.
Yeah, the Squammies are happy. We are happy, Taylor. Thanks again for another great report, and we'll catch up with you next week.
See you guys. Bye.